section 5.3, solving percent problems. A lot of the times we're told that what the total is, but we're not given part of a percent. And the best way to do it is to show this example here. It says several hundred students were surveyed. We don't know how many. It said 160 students were from one school. These students represented 40% of those surveyed. How many were surveyed? So less than half of the students would be 160. So common logic would say, well, if this is less than half is 160, then double that, it would be like over 320 students in the school that were surveyed. So what you do is you take your total number of students, the 40%, which is 160 students, and you divide that by the percent. So we're trying to calculate just 1%. So I take 160 using a calculator, and I will divide that by 40. So 160 divided by 40 will give me 4. So that will give me 4 students. For 1%. So 1% of the students is 4. So how many percent of the students do I want? Well, I actually want 100% of my students. I want to know all of them. So I will have to multiply my 4 students times 100, and that'll give me 400 students in the surveyed population. So that's always what you're trying to do. You're always trying to find out what 1% is by taking the total and dividing it by the percent, and then timesing it by 100. Okay, so one of the formulas you might see sometimes will be the number divided by the percent, and then of course you times it by 100 to get your total 100%. Okay, so whatever the number is, divide it by the percentage and times it by 100. So let's try this one. It says 120% of a number is 90. What was the number? So let's try it. We've got 90. It could be $90, could be 90, whatever. So 90 is the number. And we're going to divide it by 120%. So we've got 90 divided by 120. And if I go back to my calculator, 90 divided by 120 equals 0.75. So I have, and I'll move the calculator out of the way, 0.75. And remember, that is 0.75 per 1%. So that's 1%. So to get 100%, you then times it by 100. And it's just the same as shifting your decimal 2 places to the right. So my final answer is 75. So my number is 75, my original number. Let's take this other one here again. It says 6% of a number is 9. What is that number? So 9, I'll take the number I'm given, 9, I'll divide it by my percent, which is 6%, and that will give me what 1% is, because I'm taking 9 and I'm dividing it evenly between 6%. And the answer, if I go 6 divided by 9, make this a little bit larger, 6 divided by 9 equals decimal 666 repeating, so 0.6666, and I could just keep repeating it. And then I'm going to need to times that by 100 because it's 0.6 repeating is just 1% of my number. So times it by 100, and I can just simply punch that in, times 100, and the answer is 66.66. 6. And I guess you could say repeating. Okay, so that's the easiest way to go through it. When you're trying to calculate the percent increase or the percent decrease, in other words, how much it goes up or how much it goes down. Okay, so if I was just finding percent, say it was a test, and I say the test is marked out of 10, and I say I get 7 right out of 10. Okay, so I just went and got 70%. All I got to do is go 7 divided by 10. 70% on the test. What if I do a test the next day and I go 8 out of 10? Well, change that to a percent, and that would be 80%. So I've obviously went up 10% increase in my test. Now, if you were to try to work that out, how much did I go up in terms of my marks? Well, I went up, let me see, 1 mark. So I was an increase of 1. So if I increased 1 out of 10, okay, that's how much I increased. 1 out of the, original number, I've increased 1 out of 10. I should end up with so I went up 1 out of 10, or my increase was simply 1. Okay. What was my original? Well, my original was 7. So I went up 1 mark more than what I did. So I'll take my calculator, and I will take 1 divided by 7 equals, and then to change a decimal to a percent, you times it by 100. So I went up 14.2% in terms of my amount. All right, so let's take it here in this problem right here. Calculate the increase and write it as a fraction. So remember this formula. This is the one to remember. You will take the amount increased or decreased, and you will divide it by the original number, and then you will times it by 100 to change it to a percent. So let's take the amount it increased. The height of a rectangle increased from 8 to 12. So it went up how much? I'll go 12 take away 8, and it increased 4. So I'm going to write down 4 for the amount it increased. What was the original amount it was? 8. And then I will times it by 100. So if you work out 4 divided by 8, 0.5 is your answer. Times it by 100, and you will end up with 50%. So you can say that the height of your rectangle increased 50%. So let's try one that could be from the cafeteria. The price of milk went from 75 cents to $1.30. Of course, we got to write it the same way. So 75 cents is 0.75. Don't forget to make sure they're written the same way. So remember our formula to see if it went up or down. So obviously it went up in price. So what was the increase? So increase over the original, and then times it by 100 to change it to percent later. So the increase it went up, well, it went up a quarter, 55 cents. So it went up 0.55 cents. So 0.55. The original amount was 75 cents. So 0.75 is 75 cents. Times that by 100, and you will get your percent increase. So let's take this one right here. 0.55. Oops. So 0.55 divided by 0.75, and then we got to times that by 100, and our answer is 73.3%. So the answer is 73.3% that the milk rose in price. Now to calculate the decrease, you do the exact same thing. So if we take that same rectangle and it went from 8 centimeters, the height, to 6 centimeters. So it went down 2 centimeters. So I will write how much it went down. It went down 2 centimeters. What was the original height of the rectangle? It was 8. So the original is on the bottom. Times it by 100 to change it to percent, and you'll get your answer. So 2 divided by 8 is 0.25. You can work that out on your calculator. Times it by 100, and the answer is 25%. So the height of the rectangle went down 25%. Now, what if the milk went down in price? It went from $1.25 to 80 cents. So let's take the amount it increased or decreased on top, and then the original. Remember that formula? So it went down from $1.25 to 80 cents. So I'm going to take my calculator, I'm going to work that out. So see how much it went down. So I had $1.25. I'm going to take away 80 cents to see how much my price decreased. So it decreased 45 cents. So it decreased 45 cents. So I'll put that in for the top. And the original price was $1.25. And then I'll times it by 100. So let's work that out. So we've got 0.45 divided by 1.25 equals that. Times it by 100 to change it to percent. 36% is your decrease. So the chocolate milk in the cafeteria went down 36%. So what if you're given the percent increase or decrease? So you're told what the percent is. It goes up or down. Let's see what we'd end up with. So if somebody says increase a number by 20%, well, remember how to write 20% as a decimal? It's decimal 20. 30% as a decimal would be decimal 30. So if you want to find percent of a number, you just times it by the percent and add it to your number. So let's take a 150-pound man that gained 20% more weight since high school. How heavy is he now? Well, he was 150 pounds. We're going to times him by 20%. Of course, 20% written as a decimal is 0.20. So now we'll multiply 150 times 0.20, because that's 20, and he went up 30. 30 what? 30 pounds. LBS is symbol for pounds. So if he went up 30 pounds, let's add that on to his original weight. So he was 150 in high school. He put on 30 pounds, which is 20%, and he now weighs 180 pounds. That's his new weight. Now if we were to decrease a number, instead of adding it on, you would simply take it away. So it's the same guy, maybe a few years later. He's 200 pounds. He lost 20% of his weight. So we need to know what's 20% of 200. So we need 200-pound man times 20%. Of course, you don't leave it as 20%. You take the same 200-pound man and you times it by 0.20. And your answer for how much weight this man lost, let's use our calculator to do that. And you'd end up with 200 times 0.20 equals 40 pounds. So if he lost 40 pounds, okay, so let's take 40 pounds away from his original weight. So he was 200, he lost 40 pounds, and he now weighs 160 pounds.